Tip 1 is use the phone. So try using your phone instead of what we were talking about earlier, how our brain and how our eyes are so taxed when we're constantly trying to mirror and then not getting the full picture. As I said here, the absence of visual input has been shown, that research has shown that it will heighten our sensitivity to being what's being said. And that may have been a question from before, right? Well, if we're so visual and it's built into our DNA, then why do phones work? Well, it's precisely because of that. It's not a fake out visual cue, there's the absence of visual cues. And I actually love this statistic. The Verizon AT&T have reported 78% increase in voice-only calls. So tip number 1 is to use the phone instead. Tip number 2, build in play. So in my coaching practice in the last 2-3 weeks, I cannot tell you, I particularly work with teens and with adults, and the coaches on my team work with little ones all the way up. And something that we've seen as a repetitive theme is, where's the play in our lives? Where's the part in the day in which it's not structured and that there's no goal necessarily, but we're just lost in flow. This is really important. Now I understand that that's different than avoidance of going, I want to play versus do, something that we need to do. But here's where, when we're talking about Zoom fatigue and we start to really see this set in, consider stepping away from the screen. Build it into your schedule if you have the freedom. Build it into your child's or your teen's schedule if you are shaping this reality. Build in play. Tip number 3 is to take handwritten notes. I've been a big proponent of this for a very long time. We know this, and the evidence is very clear that it's been shown to increase retention. And that's true in a classroom setting, and that's also true in a virtual setting. The other part that's really important here, and I noted in the notes, is that what we usually pick up with peripheral vision, this is really important. You can look at me, but you can also be aware of what's happening in your environment. On Zoom, that's robbed of us. You may see, the walls behind me, but you don't know what's going on to the left and right and around. So the tip here to take handwritten notes is to give ourselves that break of looking up and looking down, that the focus and the point of focus changes. So tip number 3, take handwritten notes. Tip number 4, this is particularly important for college students. So pre-pandemic, I've been coaching and talking about this for years. Just kind of as an aside, I've worked on Zoom before Zoom was a household name. So I've been coaching through Zoom for the last 4 years. And what I've said to kids is, differentiate, create that boundary, create the limit, even if it's in your dorm room, even if it's the same space. Where's your home rest time? And where's your work zone? Never, ever, 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 ever try to work from your bed. Never, ever, 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 ever try to work from your bed. It confuses the brain. So tip number 4, create a differentiated space. And tip number 5, this is our final tip, is to find grounding. So psychologists call continuous partial attention this phenomenon of multitasking, right? Of trying to then look at something and look something else, and it will leave us scattered. It's the opposite of grounding. So I'd like us to engage together in an exercise called grounding, and I hope you'll play along. I can't see you, but I hope you will go through this with me. So 5 things you can see. Name them out loud. Maybe somebody in the other room is going to think you're talking to yourself. That's okay. 5 things you can see. So I don't want to distract you, but I'm going to say mine. Okay. And what I think is really handy is that we can use our hand for this exercise. We know that we're grounded again. We sink back into the body. These are 5. So if we're starting to feel overwhelmed, come back to your body. 5 things you can see. 4 things you can feel. And by feel, I mean touch, physically touch. So reach out around you and I want you to touch 4 things. They can be the same things you saw or different. And as you touch them, it's not a race. I want you to really acknowledge what you're touching. I want you to feel, to use that sense, and to notice the texture. Notice what you're touching. 4 things you can feel. You can even say to yourself, smooth, rough, cold, warm. 3 things you can hear. This can get a little bit more difficult. So either I invite you to keep the eyes open or shut them down and to name 3 things you can hear. Two things you can smell. Shut the eyes down or keep them open, and let's focus on 2 things you can smell. Tune in here and name them. And finally, 1 thing you can taste, something that we're not aware of when we're not eating something. We already have taste. Can you try to name it and identify it? 1 thing I can taste right now. So that's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is a grounding exercise that can be a tremendous tool for you in your own lives that you can use with those people you love